Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome to Clay Art Centre online. We're here tonight with Georgia Tenore, who's one of our long-term instructors at Clay Art Centre. If you're new to Clay Art Centre, we are a nationally recognised non-profit organisation for the ceramic arts. We are located in Portchester, New York. We are about 20 plus miles north of New York City. We run an education facility with a vast number of classes. We have a shop, a gallery. We run an artist in residence program, a community arts program. And right now we are doing a lot of online classes, and we're just after opening up again for in-person classes with limited capacity following state guidelines. I'm just going to share our mission statement with you all. Bear with me. Clay Art Centre, our mission, believing strongly that the arts have the ability to touch lives and enrich lives. Clay Art Centre's mission is to offer a stimulating space for studio practice, exhibition, and educational opportunities to better serve the community. And I'm just going to hand things over to Georgia. And before I do, Georgia is, like I said, a long-time instructor with Clay Art Centre. She's going to focus tonight on drawing for surface design. This is part of our Elements of Design series. So I'll take it away, Georgia. I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Regina. I am, in fact, Georgia Tenore, and I've been making pots for 45 years, functional work on the wheel mainly, and I've been teaching most of that time. My mission tonight is to get you to kind of think through your pot when you're starting. Just have an idea of where you're going. So we're going to cover sketching pots. The important parts of sketching really tonight that we'll focus on is for lidded pots, jars, and casseroles. Then we will talk about Shellac Resist, also known as water etching, and some sponge stamp designs and slip trailing, which is getting to be very popular, again, having a resurgence. Inspiration is really all around us, and there's so much information coming into us that we never used to have. With the advent of Facebook and YouTube, you can watch people all over the world do all kinds of things. And as you all well know, there is way more than one way to do everything in ceramics. There's dozens of clays and dozens of ways to fire and thousands of glazes. And again, more than one way. So when you see me do something, you will probably find yourself wanting to say, oh, I saw somebody do that and they did this. So it's just more information, and then you find what suits you and what's comfortable for you. I think when you start making pots, you're really focusing on the forms, and then you try to be successful in finishing your pot with glaze, some kind of, maybe develop a glaze combination that you really like. And then you may want to start getting more decorative, maybe not. Either way is fine. But if you want to start decorating and making more decorative pots, even keeping them functional, you'll find that there are certain considerations in the making of the pot. And that's what I'm trying to guide you about. For example, let's start with something really simple. This is just a plate. It's a small plate. And you can see that nice clean line. I just dipped down this way, turned it, dipped that way. You can dip across. This might be, you might want to be doing pouring different glazes and making what we sort of refer to as a landscape pot. And but the point of this is that this rim just comes gently up. There's no break in it. There's no rim that extends. Therefore, your line remains unbroken. So this is you know, a specifically good shape for that kind of treatment. Now, what if you really want to make a rim that's, you know, you want to have that color around the edge, like on this platter. So there's obviously a very distinct rim here, and it could be bigger, it could be smaller, but I like this proportion with this platter. But the idea is that the rim is extended out, and that is done, of course, you have to think of that in the making. So the rim comes out so that this can be a completely different color, and that's the accent of that. So moving on, like, to another form. So this is a bowl, and when you have a low bowl and you're not going to really see the outside of it, maybe the feature that what you want to feature is this rim. So this is glazed trailed. What's unique about this bowl also is that the clay is bare. This clay is, it's high fired, and it's perfectly fine and perfectly serviceable like this. You just have to make sure that you really rib this in really well when you trim it to get any grog back into the clay body to make it smooth and comfortable to handle. And the background of the glaze trailing here is also the bare clay. So what if you're making more of an upright form? This bowl, I borrowed this from the Clay Art Center, so some people are going to recognize this. This bowl has a nice simple decoration on the outside, but it also sits kind of low. But the canvas, or the place that the person really wanted to emphasize, was this on the inside. This is glaze slipped and carved through the glaze. And it's made by Matt Metz. And he likes to make a palette on his pots to have a surface really to decorate. He's very fond of doing that. That's one of his favorite things. You really want to get painterly and have a canvas for yourself, a surface area. Maybe you'll do this. This is Colette Smith. She was an artist at the Clay Art Center. A lovely person, we really miss her. Colette really likes to do a lot of decorating. So she has the fish, she has some texture, she has this loopy handle thing, and she has two sides to paint on. So a more upright form gives you more of an area to decorate. So when we talk about drawing and sketching, I always was drawing. It's something that I always did. But when I started to make pots, I didn't really start drawing them until I was learning to make casseroles and covered jars. And if you've ever seen a lid demonstration, very often it's hard to visualize, is that right side up or upside down, or where is this going, or what do you do? And so for this kind of lid, I drew myself a little diagram so that I could turn it upside down and I could see the way the lid goes on the pot. There's lots of kinds of lids, but they mostly all have something in common, is that they need to have a waxed area if you're going to fire a pot with a lid on it. So that can also kind of inform your decision of what kind of lid you want to make. And primarily because of the waxed area. This lid, little dish lid, has to sit in this gallery. And in order to be fired on the pot, there has to be wax, which means there's going to be a line, and you can hardly see it, a line of wax, and so it leaves a line of bare clay. In this case, it's not so bad because the clay is kind of similar in color to the little picture. This type of lid, where the shank sits in the pot, allows you to be able to glaze all the way out to here. This doesn't happen to have glaze on it because I took it off, but this way there need be no bare clay showing. So you want to know, like, what's the difference? Well, if I'm making something out of porcelain, which is so white, and I decide that I really want a dark glaze on it, I'm going to have that white ring around where the lid sits. Conversely, if I have dark clay and want to put a white glaze on it, it's the same thing. I'm going to have a dark ring. You may not be bothered by this. It may look fine. It may look really nice, but think about it, because you might not be happy after and say, oh, because maybe the line isn't really as nice and neat as you wanted, and maybe it just jumps out at your eye. So another kind of lid that we like a lot is the sort of ginger jar or cap lid. So that's where there's a shoulder here, a neck and a shoulder, and the lid sits over. So again, now, not really any wax showing, bare clay showing, if you're careful, you know, with your glazes. And this happens to kind of match the glaze and the clay pretty well. So again, not such a problem. So let's talk about the sketch idea. We just saw the ginger jar, and I did some sketches of the ginger jars, and it really doesn't matter so much what shape the bottom of the jar is, but you'll notice that you make a note to yourself that this is the only part you really need to worry about in your idea or your sketch. You need to have the shoulder for the lid to sit on, but you have to remember that this has to be, the lid has to be able to go straight down over this neck. And you want it to be, you know, fit fairly nicely, not too loose and not too tight. So you watch the angle of the neck and the angle of the lid. So let's just do a little sketch that's not too scary for those of you who say you can't draw. All right, so I penciled in what you really want to be is starting with what you learned in grade school about your basic shapes. So the casserole is basically an oval shape, kind of like this. It can be, the bottom can be a different shape, but then you're going to do what you did with when you drew a face and you dissected for the eyes. And so you come across where the lid's going to be. And this is what you really need to see. What you really need is that this part of the lid has to go inside this casserole. So this intersection is what you really want to have a little sketch of for yourself. And that, I did a kind of a sloppy job, sorry. But that's just what you really need the guide of. And then when you turn this, we'll do the other side. When you turn it upside down, you get to see what you're supposed to be making, which is this. Again, I'm not doing a fabulous drawing. I'm just, this is all you really need to be able to see. This is what I'm doing. And that really helped. The other kind of lid is the dish lid. where the lid sits in a gallery. Now, this part of the lid can stick out way more, or this can be, or not. But the idea is that you're seeing that this is what has to be the pot, and the lid is going to sit in there. So you can visualize what you're trying to do and leave enough clay to be able to do it. So it's fun to be able to design things for yourself. It's fun to be able to make a special thing that you want to make as a gift, or something for yourself that you want to do. That's part of the joy of really making pottery. You can make the size and the shape of the bowls that you want, or the plates. So I wanted something for my kitchen, and I wanted a canister that would hold garlic and shallots. Garlic on the bottom, shallots on the top. And it needs ventilation, this kind of thing. And I'm not the kind of person who can do a carving where little intricate holes are put in for the ventilation in charming little leaf-like cutout ways. So I'm sort of felt I was stuck with just putting holes in it. And I thought, what can I do to disguise the holes? So this was my problem solving. So I decided that instead of trying to really hide them or go around them, I would make them a feature of the pot. So the brown part that you see here is bare clay, and the glaze is slip trailed on. It's a stable glaze. And so I made the holes different sizes and went around, okay, with the glaze. So the construction of this pot left having a lid with a flange and a bottom with holes in it for ventilation. And then it has to sit in something, the bottom part. It sits in just a plain form. So that required a diagram. Now, for something like that that's so straight-sided, it turned out the ruler was my friend. So this is what I did. And the red part is the top, as you can see. And again, this is what I had to make for myself to remind me when I'm making it, what sits in what. You can probably make it this way if you really want to, if that's what you had wanted to have your seating be. But this is what I drew, and it's really just showing you that you can just use the straight lines if you need to. But again, that intersection is the part that you want to be able to think about and have the lid. In the stacking, the first thing that I've done that involves stacking was a creamer and sugar thing. I decided that it would be nice for storage to have cream and sugar that stack on top of each other. And then if you're not really, a lot of people don't use the sugar all the time, and you could just take this to the table. And then I put a lid on it so that you can put this creamer back in the refrigerator if there's some in there and it's covered. Again, that was the drawing for the bottom of that. And I want to say something about making pictures in general that I did with this creamer. I have found, this has always worked for me, I will throw a picture in this form that you see here, right, without the spout, and make a gallery. I made the gallery inside. So I let it become leather hard, and I cut out part of the gallery, right, and pulled the spout. Now, how did I do that? Well, I let it get leather hard, trimmed the bottom, and cut that out, and then dunked this part in water. And the clay, just let it stay wet for a little while, and the clay became soft enough to then pull the spout. It's not a gigantic spout, so it really works. It really works pretty well. It works all the time, actually. And I've done it with any kind of clay that I've made a picture out of it. All right, so let's see, we have, all right, I think it's a good minute to stop for some questions, if anybody has any questions.
Okay, thank you, Georgia. If anybody has a question, they can use the raise hand feature, which comes up next to your name in the drop-down menu, or you can type your question into the panel and we can share it with Georgia. So if anybody has any questions, please raise your hand. I can let you talk. We have a question from Zevart. Zevart, can you hear us?
Hello, Zevart.
Hello.
There she is.
What is your favorite clay body?
Oh, interesting. I've used practically every clay that Standard Clay has made. And right now, I use the clays that we have in the classroom a lot. The other clay body that I do use was Helios. That comes from High Water Clay in North Carolina. It's a porcelain. And I ordered it with friends who, and I know other people who use it. The thing I'm finding with that clay that I'm not so crazy about anymore is in our firing, if it gets a little too hot, that clay can get a little teeny tiny bit slumpy at times, a little saggy. And so I'm really liking, as far as the porcelain goes, the Laguna 550, that porcelain. I like that. And I like our brown stoneware, and our white stoneware is really good that we have. So those are standard clay bodies for anyone who's not familiar. The white stoneware is the 181, and the brown clay is the, what is it? I can't even remember. I haven't been there in so long. It's the dark brown clay. Maybe somebody else knows the number of it and can tell you. But that's what I like. And that's because I'm firing at cone 10 now. So otherwise, in another range, I really don't know.
Thank you, Zevart.
Thank you. Thank you.
The question here that was typed in, Georgia, it's from Sue Brownie. What glazes did you use on the big plate?
Oh, my plate with the decorated rim, this guy. This is a clay body we don't have at the studio anymore, but it's kind of a beigey kind of color. But the glazes that I use to trail are Temeko and Persimmon, and then there's a little green Aribe in there. So they're very stable. The other they're really easy and even if you had them on another glaze, they probably wouldn't run. They're also basically some of the same glazes I have on here. This is the, I think this is Persimmon and the buttermilk, but anything that you know isn't going to run. And this especially, again, is on the bare clay, so it wasn't going to budge. I've used a lot of different combinations doing bowls like this.
And she asked the other plate with the dark rim.
Oh, yeah, well, we don't have that glaze anymore. So we had an Aribe glaze, and this has probably got like persimmon and Aribe and then persimmon or something like that. But this is the old Aribe. We had to stop using it because it had some barium in it. So, and we stopped when we really started teaching. We had a lot of students because we don't use any barium, even a tiny percent. So that's a hard color to get, but you can come pretty close. That's the one.
Okay, and I'm just going to let Jane ask a question. Jane, you can go ahead.
Questions about the same plate. How were you able to glaze the rim of that as you did?
Okay, maybe another time, you know, I can do a demo. I slip trail on the wheel. So I'll tell you exactly how I do it.
Oh, okay.
I'll use for that, I happen to have brought with me in case someone had the question. I use this, I've changed brands. So this is a Madison Reed hair color bottle and not Clairol. So this is, so that's what this is, but you can buy these bottles if you have your hair done. You can buy them in Sally's Beauty Supply, or you can just use a slip trailer with a bigger nozzle that holds more. And what you're doing is you take the bisque plate and you center it on the wheel. And interestingly enough, when you get the wheel going, the first thing that you do is wet the rim with a brush and water. It needs to be a bigger brush than this, but you would then, you brush the rim with water. And then, this is the tricky bit, okay? You have to, let me see if I can lower this down a little. So with the wheel going, you hold the brush in front of the glaze and you're just feeding the brush with the squeeze bottle as the plate goes around. So sometime maybe we'll do a reel of tips and tricks and show that again. But that's also how I banded this and the inside. I do that on the wheel. It takes a little practice, but it's really great. I like to have it. I just think rims are so hard to do that when I want to do a rim that's a separate color from a bowl, I will either band it on the wheel, or my second favorite thing, actually maybe it's my first favorite, is to put the plate on a banding wheel and apply the glaze by going around that rim with a sponge, even just your student piece of sponge, and just sponge and sponge and sponge, sponge that rim. And you can get a pretty nice line. It's not going to be a cut looking line, sharp, but it's really kind of nice. And you just keep going until you've built up the glaze that you can see it's a little pebbly and it's on there. And that's a really nice way to do the rims of plates. And then you can do that over or under another glaze. It's nice and soft looking.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you for your question. And there's one more question, but I think you kind of covered it, which was, which glazes did you use to make the flowers on the shallot and garlic keeper? Okay,
I used, this is Clay Art Center Glazes, so I don't know where the person's from, but buttermilk, Aribe, I'm sorry, buttermilk and persimmon. I thought the persimmon would be a little lighter than it is, but it's on such dark clay. And it was dark, but those two glazes that neither one of them will budge. So
I think that's all the questions, Georgia, if you want to carry on.
Okie dokie. All right, so the next thing I was going to do is do a little bit of, let's do Shellac Resist. Okay, this is called water etching. And one of the two favorite things that potters like to put on their pots are dragonflies and ginkgo leaves. Okay, so I am a ginkgo leaf lover. I pick them up in the fall. They're wonderful. You can actually roll them into clay because they get so leathery hard when they're golden. I happen to have some of them here. And then you can trace them, right? You can actually trace them. So, but for the Shellac Resist, how does that work? Now, someone's going to say, you know, you don't have to just use shellac, and that's true. You don't have to use shellac. There are other things that you can use other than shellac to do this. The weakest one is wax. It's just doesn't hold the strong edge as much. And there are other things, but you'd have to look those up. I'm not really sure what they are. But the shellac I like, and the shellac comes in amber. So what you want to do is, there's a small can. I put it in a jar, but it comes in a small can. And in the hardware, there's like one brand that makes it. And what you would like to do when you get it is leave it open someplace in the air, and every couple of hours stir it around and let some of the moisture evaporate from it so that it's a little bit thickened, so it makes it much easier to use. The solvent for this, and this is really important, the solvent is denatured alcohol. You can buy this in Home Depot, or you can buy grain alcohol in the liquor store, which is actually expensive. So how do you start with this? Well, I like to just draw. Regina, can you put me on so I can have myself on the full screen? Can I do that? Oh, I got it. I got it. Thanks. I can see what I'm doing. All right. So on here, I'm going to just draw the outline of the ginkgo leaf in pencil. These are really easy to draw. You know, after you just take a look at enough ginkgo leaves, and then you can always kind of fix your drawing if you make a mistake. All right, so that's my first step. Now, I used to do this bone dry, but when you do it bone dry and you're doing a bunch of them, and then you start to realize you've created a lot of dust and a lot of clay dust, which is not ideal. So what I started to do is do it when it's dry, leather hard, when the rim is kind of dry. And now, there's any number of things. I used to just do the leaf and then put the shellac on it and then call it a day and do it like that. But then, of course, more is more. So I decided that I want to make the veins in the leaf show. So everybody knows about, there's these metal, there's like a bunch, this comes, 8 of these come together. There's those, there's Dolan has some, everybody has some of these. And then there's this little gizmo here that has that little wire on top. So then what I'm going to do is I pull the veins through, just pull them through, just like in a nice manner here. I'm not even going to finish all of it. And then it looks like this. Now I just faintly covered this, just so you could see it. So that's my lines on there. And then the next step is I all of a sudden I thought to myself, they don't have to be just plain. They can have, you can have a green leaf so that you can put some color underneath there, right? So why not? So I decided to put underglaze. So then that would just be like that, just coating it. And so far, you haven't done anything that you can't correct or absolutely actually remove, right? So this gets the underglaze. And the clay doesn't, what's nice about it not being completely bone dry is it doesn't really drag, catch the brush. Okay, so then that's on there. And you let that dry. And now you put the shellac on. You do not want to use your good brush for this. You want a synthetic brush, not your good brush. And that would be actually this pour brush, which you will immediately put in a solvent. All right, so this also glides on really nicely. And you know you have enough on when you can see the sheen of the shellac. And if it's really thin and you're just so anxious to use it, you may just need to put 2 coats on. So then this just goes, as you see I'm putting that on there, it just slides right on. And again, because this isn't bone dry, it doesn't catch on the clay and stick on. Okay, so that's it applied. Now you have to let it dry a good amount of time, right? And here it is dry. The thing about this now, you can do if you want to. Supposing I thought, well, I'd like to open that up a little and maybe I don't like this, or maybe I'd like to go notch in here a little more on the shape of the leaf. Maybe I want to take a little out. You can do that at this point. And believe it or not, what I'm about to do is the hardest part of this whole thing. And the hardest part, not the hardest part, but the most time-consuming part, I guess, is to wash this off. And when I say wash it off, I mean really wash it off. I'll show you what I read. Have a bowl of water. I don't know how to get rid of these. Okay. It's not going to really go down far enough. Okay, I have this bowl of water, and I'm going to really just attack this. And the water, you can hear it's running off. And I'm going to rub around. It doesn't have to be dripping that much. Okay. I'm going to rub around and rub around and rub around. And what am I doing? I am eroding the clay. I think I did it to the wrong one. Okay. And you really want to scrub away at this, because what you're doing is you're dissolving the clay. You're really dissolving it, and you'll be able to feel, and you can go down as far as you want. I don't know how you're going to be able to see that this is raised, but you can see that this is raised now. I can feel it. Now, what'll happen is, in the bisque firing, the shellac will burn off, and you will have a raised design. And when it is glazed, it will look maybe like this. This is, get close. These are the ginkgo leaves, and this is under the olive celadon. And you can see that there's bumpy texture to it. And up close, you can see that there's little veins in the leaves. And so that's what you get. It's not exactly like carving because it's a flat design, but it has life to it, and it has much more appeal than just having a painted leaf or design. And you can do it with lettering or any number of things. But what I'm going to do now is take that 1 second to just take my brush immediately into the alcohol. Otherwise, it'll never come off. Turpentine doesn't work, in case you think I have turpentine handy. And okay, let's go on to slip trailing quickly. Interesting thing about slip trailing. Slip trailing, the challenge is to get what you want to trail into the right consistency to come out of the trailer. This is a very popular slip trailer. Comes with more than one size tip, but you will find that the size of the tip and the relative degree of liquidity of what you're trying to get through it, you have to find the happy marriage. It has to be big enough for your slip to come out, or it has to be small enough for your underglaze, and finding that happy medium is kind of tricky. So, but you can find it. This is the slip sucker, for lack of a better word. And it's made by the company, the Zyme company that makes this trailer. But let me just tell you something about it. When you go to fill this with a slip, you only want to dip into the slip a tiny bit. Don't go plunging down and squeezing and thinking it's going to suck up thick slip or glaze, because it won't work that way. I do, as you saw, I do glaze trailing and slip trailing. I think that when you get your trailer, make up some slip. I don't put anything in my slip. My slip is the porcelain clay body and water. And I whip it up really, really well. And then I sieve it all the time. And if you don't have a sieve, a fine sieve at home, a tea strainer is fine. And then take something like I took a bat and then just start doodling and fooling around with the different ways that you can use this trailer. Now, the thing is, what I found challenging is that the slip trailer is really not supposed to touch the pot. It's supposed to be just like a little bit above, and you're laying it down. And that's important, because if you drag too much, you will accumulate clay. Your clay should really be damp. So this is unfired. This is something that goes on greenware, unfired, and it should be damp, because if this is really too dry, what's going to happen? It's going to suck the moisture out of the slip, and the slip will pop off because it used up, the moisture was taken out of it. So I banded this with underglaze, and I'm going to just trail over it if my trailer will behave, and then maybe make like some leaves or something. And again, and it's really hard not to hit the cup. The interesting thing about doing this with the porcelain slip is even the texture of this, it will hold, and it doesn't need an additive. We used to put a salt in it, or Calgon used to make a water softener that we used to add, which is basically had soda ash in it. But you can do a thick design like that one. But just remember, let's see, I had a little cheat sheet about what's important. But definitely sieve it. You can't, don't expect that you can whip it up enough to have it go through and not be in trouble. Now, you can also use, there's all kinds of slip trailers, and there's fat ones, thick ones. Actually, the hair color, the hair bottles, or with this, or the dozens and dozens of slip trailers with the fat tips. There's all kinds now. This is Sean O'Connell's, and he does it with blobbing on the slip, so you can do it like that. You can get very finely detailed, and you can use dots. Now, you can also, of course, put glaze in, get your glaze a little thick, and if you know how your glaze behaves, this could be, it could be glaze. So I have a studio, a big studio, and I was in an light industrial area, and I was above a upholsterer, two insanely crazy people. But if you can get a hold of, there's all kinds of sponge, and cutting into sponges and making designs it's really a lot of fun. And then you have something that's unique. I'm going to do this with Underglaze, but I'll show you on a cup, one of my favorite cups. That little pattern on there of that leafy thing was a sponge stamp. So you can use it with wax or glaze or underglaze. Originally, when I made these, I made them with a wood burning tool. Very bad idea. I had good ventilation, a fan at my back, but it's not a great idea to do that. So I found these, Fiskar makes these tiny scissors. They're really good and sharp, and you can draw your design and snip and cut them out. What you want to do is you want to have your design raised enough so that the base of the sponge doesn't hit the pot, ideally. And kind of just show you a little what that looks like. They're really a lot of fun. You can really get into it, and you can make all kinds of initials and things out of it. I seem to be missing a brush. Okay. What's this?
Georgia, can I interrupt you for 1 second? I have a question asking, is it possible for you to tilt the camera down a little?
Yeah, I'm going to try to do that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I don't want to make anybody, let's see if I can. This holder, I'm not totally thrilled with the holder. It kind of fights me a little bit. Let's see. Okay. All right, is that better? All right.
Thank you.
Okay, so now I'm just going to brush some underglaze on this dragonfly, and I'm not trying to really make a very saturated job of it, because I kind of want, I like to make things a little abstracted. And so there's also loads of stencils. Using stencils, what I like to do when I use a stencil is you maybe slip trail or take a brush and outline the stencil. So this is just dry, sort of dry brushed on there, not quite completely on, kind of a ghosty looking, and then put the pattern on like that, kind of just a little loose. And it's fun to do, just go all over. And then do a little all over, and then maybe take one and outline it, or take a slip trailer and go over it. Let's outline something. I have in the habit of working in the cap of the underglaze. So I'm just going to outline and make it a little, you'll see, a little fanciful looking, just to give it a little personality of, extend, just swoop over it. Now this is an underglaze, so if it's under something like a celadon or a clear glaze, and then you can even embellish it and turn it into something else, like it looks like butterflies. But to fool around with something that gives you a start on your pattern. Let's just go crazy here with the slip trailer a minute. By the way, the slip I put in here, you have to watch that your slip doesn't start to thicken up on you. And by the way, a little trick, to keep a pin in the top of your slip trailer, what works perfectly is, you know, the turkey trussing set with the string that you get at Thanksgiving, that fits in here perfectly and acts like a little plug in the top of the slip trailer. That works. So now I'm gonna, let's just for fun, go over one of these dragonflies with slip. And I'm kind of gonna carve the slip in a little with it. This looks a little messy. But you can go, I don't know how that shows up, but you can go around him with slip. I didn't really check. This slip got a little thick on me. This is like, if something doesn't work, do everything kind of thing, like that little guy. And then you have to picture what it will do with glaze over it. You would have it lighter where the white is and then darker in between. So we have that one. Also on this poppy from before, I did that. That's one way to treat this, which, you know, is a nice texture and effect on the green. And then also in between here could be something carved through. After that slip has dried. Let me just. I've just carved a couple of lines in there, you can see, and I really would wait until that dried, and then you could do a little more of that and then carve a design in around where the slip is. All right, are there any other questions?
You have a few questions here, Georgia. Let me go back here. Regarding washing with the water, the question was, would it not lead to grog coming to the surface?
Oh, good question. I forgot to mention that. It's ideally done on porcelain. If you wanted to, and you have like a little bit of grog, like even a white stoneware or a brown clay that has a little grog in it, what you can do is you could do your design, you could like burnish or really rib in really well on the surface of the clay, put the shellac on, and then when you wash away, you will be raising grog, but sometimes you can even take like a spoon, a metal spoon, and you can kind of burnish that grog around it back in, depending on how really groggy your clay is, because there's degrees. There's some of it's a little sandy, some of it's really groggy. I used a clay, by the way, I tried a clay from Tucker Clay that I'd never used before, Pro Stone, and those groggy clays, I wanted a clay that would be a different color to leave bare, but it's really a gritty, groggy clay. And so when I went to trim that, it was it was really sandy. So there's levels of grog, but that's the way you could do that. And then what's underneath the shellac on your groggy clay, what's underneath would be smooth. And then you would just have to worry about kind of trying to burnish what did get brought to the surface, because that would happen. Just works best on porcelain.
I'm going to let Estrelita answer, or ask a question, I should say. Estrelita.
Hello.
Hello.
Did you add any colorant to your shellac?
No, that's amber shellac.
Oh, that's what I would purchase, amber shellac?
Purchase it as amber, yeah.
Okay,
and
thank you.
it comes clear and it comes amber, but find the amber, and it is this color.
Oh, okay, thank you.
And you can see how thick I made it, just a little, because it's very thin when you get it. And
Right,
keep it,
by evaporating.
and I like to put it in a jar because the lid of those cans is kind of, it's got a paint can kind of lid.
Yeah.
No, if you get the clear, you can color the clear with food coloring, not frosting coloring or cake coloring, as some people have made the mistake of buying Wilton coloring.
Okay.
But, like Easter egg color, you can color it if you can only get the clear. But the amber is great. As a matter of fact, the amber, I did a whole series of teapots, and I had them on the shelf, and they had all the amber shellac on, waiting to be bisqued. And I just wished I could get the glaze to be that amber color, because it's like the fall. It's just like this. It looks like the fall ginkgo leaf.
And then I just had one other question.
Sure.
Which brand trailer are you using? The blue thing.
Oh, well, this is the very overpriced trailer. That it's not the Zyme. I have the Zyme also. I have that one. I recommend this. It's just really fine. This is Zyme. It's $20 or $30. It comes in 2 sizes, and it's around $20. It comes with different tips. This, I don't actually even know the brand of this.
Okay.
I bought it at Ceramic Supply once, and it was in like a little cellophane bag, and it was, I don't even want to tell you.
Yeah, it's okay.
It
And
was like 40 something.
Oh,
It was very expensive. Yeah, but I will say it does not clog. It comes
Okay.
out nice and smooth. So
And
anyway,
I'm sorry. And I just have one last question. That
Sure.
the little white thing that you attached to the trailer, what was that?
this is made by the Zyme company that makes this,
Okay.
and it's actually Bailey didn't even know about it. I picked it up. They finally did get it in, but it's made by this company, and it's the slip. It's made for the slip filling. I'm sure they don't call it the slip sucker like I. And
Oh,
you could
slip
also,
sucker, yeah.
and if you wanted to, you could also use it, to squirt glaze out, just like with this on. But
Okay.
it's really good for filling this, because it's hard to,
Yeah.
fill them
Thank
in
you.
there. Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you, Estrelita. Let me go back here. We have a couple of more questions, Georgia.
Sure.
Is it best to do the slip trailing on bone dry greenware or bisque?
No, slip can only go on the damp clay. You can't really slip trail. You could probably underglaze, do your some trailing with underglaze on bisque, but no, you really want to do that on the damp clay. The reason is, if the clay is really, really dry and I put the slip on, the bone dry pot will suck the moisture right out of the slip, and the slip will come off. It can go on when it's wet, and it can go on when it's leather hard. Very often what you would do is just trim the pot and then keep it damp, not so soft that you can, squish it, but keep it damp enough so that when this goes on, now I would cover this to dry it, but it will keep its texture. Also, you can apply this on the wheel, on the pot that you've just trimmed. You can apply this with a brush, or you can make a slip, this kind of a slip, thick enough to what we call marshmallow fluff consistency. And you can put it on really thick if you want to, not necessarily out of a trailer, but just with your fingers on the wheel, and play with that. That's really a fun thing to do too. That would be another fun demonstration, playing with that. Fun with slip.
Thank you, Georgia. There's a question about shellac and bisque and toxic fumes.
I'm really well ventilated. Most kilns are very ventilated. I have an old kiln, but I have such a whopping exhaust fan above it. I have the same kiln, by the way, that I've had since about 1979. I do not have a computer on it. And right now I just bisque in it. I have glaze fired in it, my bisque in it, but I have a really good ventilation system. And, you know, it's just one of those things that some of the stuff that we do, I don't know that it's really, there's not enough of it really, I don't think, to be a toxic fume that would travel very far. It's not a lot, to tell you the truth. I hadn't really thought about it. I don't, you know, even when you do a lot of it on a pot, it's not that much in a firing. And I don't really know that it's how toxic it is. And I just know that I'm not anywhere near it when it's firing. And and it's not close to anybody. Interesting question.
From Karen, did you know you were going to put the ginkgo leaves on the jar before you made the piece?
Oh, I just love ginkgo leaves. I think that if I'm going to put a decoration on something, it's probably going to be a ginkgo leaf, a dragonfly, or a leaf of some kind. I have another one of those sponge stamps. They don't have to be very complicated to be effective. Just this plain cutout leaf that, you could draw. I'll show you. It makes more of an impression than it looks like it would. And so I'm usually doing something like that, like leaves, or lately I have been doing pots that you could see in the shop online with much more decorative lids that I'm using some laser cut wooden rolling pins. But usually if I put a decoration on, I just know that it's going to be something like that, probably maybe the ginkgo.
Thank you, Georgia. Question, what do you use to thicken the underglaze?
If I'm going to do I haven't trailed underglaze really. I usually brush that on, but you could do it if you wanted to have like a line of it or something. And I don't think you would. I think some of them come thicker than others. I've noticed that. This is what I have favorite ones. Some of them are thick and some of them are thin. And I haven't ever trailed it on there. I'll tell you that one of the things that I do a lot of, as I showed you on this, the sponge stamp of this, usually I outline, when I do this, I outline it and I try to make it look buried in the pot. Like, for example, this lid. You can see there's leaves in here, there's dragonflies. You don't necessarily see everything at the same time. And sometimes I will outline that, do this, the stamp, and then outline it. I have this wonderful little brush, handmade by a lovely man who's no longer with us, but he made some really fabulous handmade brushes. And this, get yourself a very fine little brush like this, and then you can just do a simple stamp and then just kind of outline it. And this goes under the glaze. It can go over. By the way, velour, the Amico velour velvets, you can use the black, probably other dark colors too, but you can use those to outline something over a glaze. They don't tell you that underglazes can go over glazes, but in some instances they can. And in my conversation with the manufacturer at one of the conferences, he said, we can't say it because it takes so much testing and we can't be responsible because someone's going to try it and say it didn't work and get upset. But you can, we do it all the time with Easy Stroke or black velvet underglaze. We make lines on pots with them all the time. I mean, I wouldn't use a ton of it, which you probably can do too, but we put it over glaze all the time for outlining mostly.
That was great, Georgia. So we're at 7:36. Did you have more to show, or did you want to take more questions?
I'll take some more questions.
If anyone else has questions.
Or if anyone needed to see anything else or know anything else, sure. Any more questions?
I don't see any so far. Let's just give people a minute. So you can type your questions into the Q&A, or you can type it into the chat, or you can use the raise hand. Let me see. I think there's a raised hand. Message. Oh, just some thank yous from people.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you all for coming. It's a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed doing it. And I'm happy to share everything that I've learned from somebody else. And I think that that's one of the things that makes the clay community such a great community of sharing. The great thing too about the Clay Art Center is there are so many people working there basically in the same medium, but with such diverse work and results. And the fun for me is that if I want to learn how to do something, there's somebody there to show me how to do it. And we not only share information, but we actually like watching each other. And I know that there are people that I know who know how to do what I'm doing as well as or better than I am who are watching, because we often just will, when we go around visiting each other, chatting, and we'll sit and watch each other work. It's just never lose that fascination. Somebody wrote, thank you. You're welcome. There's always so much to learn.
Yeah, and I think that with the webinars that do presentations on surface decoration, I think we could do follow-ups on those. So maybe we can talk about that because there's so much more to cover. We could do a part.
There really is. I mean, if I had done this where what my wheel is, I wasn't able to have all of this around me there, but we could do things like the marshmallow slip and working with that very thick slip or bending on the wheel. And maybe we could do a collection of little clips for people too on little different techniques.
Okay, thank you everybody for attending. Thank you, Georgia, for your time and for sharing.
Thank you. You're more than welcome.
Be back here again pretty soon. Good night.
Yes, yes. Thanks.